How to recognize a fake friend. 11 signs of a jealous friend. In this video, we will discuss how to identify a toxic friend, a jealous friend, a friend who does not celebrate your successes, a friend who is not on your side but against you. So, let's get started. The first and most important sign is that you really truly feel empty after talking to her. Indeed, if you find yourself analyzing your interactions with someone for a while, meaning you may have communicated several times and felt empty, what happens at that moment? Emotional discomfort, as well as physical discomfort. This means that all systems of our body are interconnected, and if, when talking to someone, you feel filled up and as if you are on the wings of happiness, that is, you communicate, let's say, there is an exchange of energies, but there are people who are only ready to take, to drain. So if you feel physical discomfort after interacting, if you feel empty, this is the first sign indicating that the person next to you may not be the right one to be around, possibly a friend you shouldn't be in contact with. The second sign is that she copies you. In fact, if this is one of the signs of your friend, it does not necessarily indicate that she is toxic. It's just one possibility that she really likes you and has issues with her own imagination. She simply looks at you and copies. If you are not particularly bothered by a situation where, for example, everything in your wardrobe is also in your friend's wardrobe, then everything is fine. In other words, if you are okay with this situation, then that's great. But if you tell your friend, for example, that she shouldn't buy the same dress as mine and shoes and so on, and she still does it, then the question is only for you. Are you ready to put up with this or not? Moving on, she teaches you how to live. And here, there are often unsolicited pieces of advice. So you go to her for support, perhaps. You want to vent, just to vent because you are feeling bad right now. What do you get? You are in a moment when you are completely open, with your soul laid bare, feeling pain and wanting to share with someone, and you receive those unsolicited pieces of advice that are not needed at all right now. She gives this advice, and this advice can often, let's say, hit hard on self-esteem. And after such interactions, you might feel like a fool, a failure, or just completely insignificant and unclear. That is, pay attention to your feelings when you are around your friend. If you realize that you are communicating and have an equal contribution to the interaction in your relationship with your friend, and you give and receive, then everything is fine. But if you constantly lose your energy, lose your self-esteem, and feel drained after interactions, like you went to vent, just needing someone to be there, and instead you come away, feeling even more down, feeling like a nobody after talking to that friend, then ask yourself who is around you. Furthermore, she is very jealous. For example, you mentioned that you met with someone. They sat in a cafe or were chatting, and then there might be a tantrum about why you didn't invite her and so on. It's almost like being in a relationship with a jealous husband. Girls communicate among themselves, and jealousy can linger in relationships. There is this possessiveness, but if it goes too far, it always leads to abusive relationships. If you are already afraid to tell her that you met or talked to someone else because there will be almost a hysterical outburst and a scandal about why you didn't take her with you, then this again indicates that the friend next to you is not the right one to have by your side. Next, they do not celebrate your successes. For example, when you achieve something and want to share your joy, you hear comments like, "See, you have it all figured out. You have a good career, and I don't. You have a wonderful boyfriend, and I don't. You have a good family, and I don't," and so on. How do you feel in that moment? You start to feel guilty that you seem to be doing well while she seems to be struggling. And this again indicates that the friend right next to you is perhaps envious. Moving on. She only takes and gives nothing in return. For instance, if you've noticed moments when, for example, you got a manicure and she asks for the manicurist's number, or you bought shoes on sale and she asks where you got them. For example, she asks to borrow money and you lend it to her. But at the moment when you ask, for example, if she did something you liked, you ask for her phone number, and so on, she suddenly lost that phone. She doesn't remember, for example, where she bought the shoes and so on. It's as if you are playing a one-sided game. You give, but in return you receive nothing. And perhaps you have already felt this. But we just thought that this is the kind of person she is. However, this is again a factor indicating that you have a jealous friend nearby. She wants to have it better than you do. She is competing with you, and you don't realize it. Furthermore, you cannot trust her. And even with such moments, friends communicate. This often happens. That is, you told her something in secret and she blabbed it. And then she tells you, "Oh, I accidentally let it slip. I didn't even expect it to come out like that. So if you realize that you cannot trust your friend, then why have such a friend in your life? In other words, for what purpose? To be afraid of saying something unnecessary, to worry that everyone around you will find out about what you are sharing? This is something to consider. For what purpose? Why is this person in my circle? Moving on. She highlights her strengths against your weaknesses. We all have our strengths, and naturally, as the flip side of the coin, we all have our weaknesses. When you are friends, when you communicate, and when it is not toxic communication, you notice each other's strengths. That is, you can give a compliment, you can admire something, and you receive the same in return. But if you notice that when you meet with your friend, she constantly, for instance, has moments where she says, "Look at my beautiful legs, unlike yours," it can be a sign. Curved? Well, let's say I'm speaking in exaggerations right now. It may not all be so, openly and overtly. But again, rely on your feelings. If after meeting with a friend you feel that your self-esteem begins to drop, then the problem lies not with you, but with your friend. If she constantly uses such methods, it means she is trying to compensate. This indicates that she has significant doubts about herself, and her self-esteem actually needs work. And what does she do? She tries to humiliate you, to bring you down a little so that she can feel better about herself. But what happens to you at that moment? At that moment, you lose your self-esteem. Moving on. She organizes competitions. For example, you share that you have long dreamed of something and have bought it. For instance, you dreamed of a certain pair of shoes. And so, even if you wouldn't have bought them for yourself, there was some grand sale, and you just allowed yourself to get this model, and now you are incredibly happy. And this moment is devalued by your friend who says, "Well, so what? I bought those shoes 10 times more expensive," for example. Once again, the situation may be exaggerated, but the message should be clear. If you share your joy that uplifts and makes you happy, and immediately there is devaluation and, let's say, competition with comments like, "I have it better, I have it better, I have it better," know that you have a toxic friend next to you who envies you. Next, self-assertion at your expense. Well, I have already talked a bit about this. That is, criticism in communication with friends is appropriate. It means that you may have acted in a way that you wouldn't have preferred. The friend says, "What are you doing? Have you lost your mind? Why did you act that way? Why did you hurt that person? Why did you talk to your mom like that? Why did you hurt your boyfriend?" And so on. Such criticism is appropriate, but when your friend asserts herself at your expense, meaning she constantly elevates herself above you, by saying things like, no, your achievements are nothing compared to what I have done. Look at me, I am so great." And I have already mentioned this. As soon as you feel that your self-esteem begins to drop and your friend tries to look down on you, it indicates her jealousy. It is up to you to decide whether you want to remain in toxic communication and toxic relationships with your friend, or if it is better to minimize your interactions with her. And lastly, the opposite advice. When you realize that the advice given to her seems to be wrong. For example, you have a good boyfriend and a situation arises, some kind of argument, and perhaps you even realize that you are at fault in this situation. You tell your friend about him, and she, having heard all his merits before, says, "Oh, he's nothing at all, just leave him, he's not your match, he's not an option," and so on. And you understand that the advice for you, let's say, is false, not good, because you see the picture differently. So, these contrary pieces of advice indicate that there is a person next to you who wants to destroy your happiness because, in her eyes, everything in your life is much better. That's all I have regarding this video. It was me, Alice. I hope for your likes and subscriptions. Write in the comments what you would like to discuss in my new videos. Don't forget to hit the bell, and goodbye, everyone.